Good evening. I'm Phil Archer, Deputy Director at Reynolda House. December 2020 would have marked the 34th consecutive year of Robin Voiers' one-woman performance of A Christmas Memory at Reynolda. Robin is an actor, poet, dancer, and teacher and lives here in Winston-Salem. And A Christmas Memory began as a short story by Truman Capote, published in 1956, a largely autobiographical story remembering his childhood in the 1930s during the Depression in Alabama. Since we couldn't gather in person this year, we invited Robin to come and share her memories of this long-cherished tradition at Reynolda. So Robin, why don't we start with the story itself? What exactly is being remembered in A Christmas Memory?
It's a moment in time in his youth when he's 7, and he's an odd little boy, and she's an odd older lady. They both are sort of the outcasts of the family, and they become best friends. And their dream all year long is to get enough money to bake fruitcakes for all of their friends. And they spend the whole year trying to get money, doing odd things, to bake these fruitcakes that they end up giving to people that sometimes they rarely know. But it's the process. It's the going out and picking of the pecans. It's the baking. It's the distributing. It's the making each other's gifts. It's just a childhood memory that was special to him, one that I think from my studies of his life that he never really found again. In the one-woman show called True, that is a biographical piece about him, he said, the only person in the world that I ever really felt like loved me was Miss Sook. And it's this friendship between these two odd characters that is so special.
How did you discover the story, and how did you first come to perform it at Reynolda?
I had read it years ago when I taught a 5th grade class. Goodness knows I didn't have an education degree, but they needed somebody in Tennessee. And it was in a compilation of Christmas stories. And I always read it at Christmas time, and it was just beautiful. It seems that here at Reynolda House for 20 years, a professor from the School of the Arts had read A Christmas Carol, James Beard, and he was retiring, and Marjorie Northup, your program's director, education, do everything person as you are, asked me, what can you do to replace that? And I said, well, I do have a little short story that I love. On the farther shore, Queenie shakes herself and shivers. I tremble too, but not with the cold, with excitement. One of my hat's ragged roses sheds a petal as I lift my head to inhale the pine-heavy air. Oh, buddy, can you smell it? We're almost there. It's as though we were approaching an ocean. And indeed, it is a kind of an ocean, scented acres of holiday trees, prickly-leafed holly with berries shiny as Chinese bells. Black crows swoop upon them screaming. Having stuffed our burlap bag with enough crimson and greenery to garland a dozen windows, we set about choosing a Christmas tree. Now, it should be, buddy, twice as tall as a boy. So a boy can't steal the star. Well, I didn't say you, buddy. I know you've never done that. I said a boy. And you know there's other boys in the world besides you, don't you know? But they don't count, because you're my friend. It really is for two voices, because in it, it's being told through Truman's voice as a young man off in military school, and he's remembering this. So I did manage to find a young man that for 2 years we did the production together in the old house in front of the chimney place.
How much of the story is in the production, and how did it transition from being a 2-person play to a 1-woman play?
Well, everything is in there. Oh my. Oh, buddy, it's fruitcake weather. It's almost word for word. People know this story and they love it. And if you leave out a certain part, which I have done before just because of a time sequence, I left out some description, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, "Where was that part about the frogs the size of dinner plates doing their belly flops?" And I thought, oh, I left out that section. So some part of it is a favorite for somebody out there. But we were to do it up at the Kreitz home, up the Reynolds home up in Virginia. And the young actor that was performing with me, he was an adult, but he was very youthful in his presentation. I couldn't find him. We were to go up and perform together, and it was before the time of all the phones. He just didn't appear. And so all the way up there, I was transposing pronouns, making his lines my lines, and I told the director up there, I said, I will have to use the book. I almost knew it, and when I finished, she said, well, I don't know why you think you need someone else in the play. Just study a little more, make it your own, and do it yourself. And a friend of mine has said, I really liked it better. She had seen it with the two characters, because we had trouble really believing Buddy was there. But when you make him there and talk to him and make him a little boy, then you can conjure up the Buddy better in your mind.
Wow. I've always wondered, when Buddy is or would be speaking, are you imagining him speaking, or are you thinking of your next line?
Oh no, I imagine him speaking. I'm looking at him and imagining his face, because that leads me into the way that I would respond. At one point, when we're looking for our Christmas tree, I'll tell him it has to be twice as tall as a boy, so a boy can't steal the star. Well, I move away, but then obviously he has said something that his feelings are hurt. So I have to imagine him saying, well, I never did that, because I turn and say, I know you've never done that. I said, a boy. There's other boys in the world besides you, don't you know? And then I imagine him again, and then I have to say, but they don't count, because you're my friend. So I'm always hearing Buddy and imagining his reaction, and when you leave the spaces, you let the audience imagine it as well. And I don't know if we have time for this, but one of the dearest moments is in the play when she says somebody they sent one of the cakes to took a picture of the two of them and sent it to her. And she says, it's the only time anyone has ever taken her picture. And I thought, my gosh, what a stunning, poignant moment about that. But the audience didn't seem to get it. And my husband, Bill, who had directed the play, said, you're not giving them time. You've got to say it, so, he took our picture. Imagine, come on, Buddy, now smile. Let them take the picture, enjoy it with Buddy, and then say, the only one we've ever had taken. Then the audience has time to get that feeling that, well, yeah, that was really something. She only had one picture taken of herself in her whole life. Isn't that sad? So it's the space.
Is your image of Buddy locked, or does Buddy change over the years?
Oh, no, he's always been a very precocious little blonde kid, like Truman Capote was. I see mainly from here to here, his eyes. And it's very important to listen to him and to hear him as well.
You and Bill had the challenge then of inviting people to the Reynolds country estate and convincing them that they were in Depression-era Alabama in a country house. So how did the set evolve, and how did you persuade people?
Well, the house is so very beautiful, but just a few little props helped with the thing. I always made my own kite. I always had a sewing basket, but we couldn't move the furniture around very much. But in the basement, the superintendent of the furniture at the time was a man named Luther. And Luther would allow us to go down into the basement and bring up this white painted table and two very simple chairs, and would oversee our moving of the sofas and some of the priceless artwork aside. And then I didn't start with that one, with a wonderful carriage. I had nothing. I pantomimed a carriage, which is so important to them. And I finally did find the old Victorian wicker carriage. A friend of mine who had died, I was talking with her husband later, and he was asking me what I was up to, and I explained, and I said, "But Pete, I've got to find a carriage. I need a big old Victorian wicker carriage." And he said, "We have it in the basement, and it's yours." So it was Barbara Smitherman's grandmother's carriage. And it's a wonderful piece to take into schools. Kids and people love props. They really do like to see them on the stage, whether it's my old nutcracker or a kite or that little old truck and some blocks, or the beaded purse with all of their sacred money in it. They love props, and so that was fun.
And the purse is percussive. Don't we hear the money?
We hear the money in there, and it's exactly $12.73, like it says in the play. And it's dollar bills rolled up, and a couple of old 50-cent pieces, heavy enough to weight a dead man's eyes. And this is the genius of Capote. The wadded up dollar bills, tight as a May bud, with all the promise of spring, and a dollar bill is all the promise of their wealth. I mean, everything he says is just tightly rolled and like a May bud. So it's been a wonderful, I love to get props and costumes together. It's fun for me.
The specificity of the play is part, and the story is a lot of the charm. So I've never seen a Christmas tree with watermelon ornaments and cats. And how did you find the ornaments to?
Oh, well, she mentions these very specific ornaments because they don't have any money, and they cut them out of colored paper. Lots of fish. Who hangs a fish on their tree? Watermelon, apples, and some cats, because they're easy to draw. One year, and I'm not sure who the children's director was, when we moved here into the stage and we could really have a tree, she had the children in her art class make all of these decorations for us. Even the winged angels made of saved up sheets of tinfoil. She had the children make everything just so, and so the tree is very much like it might have been.
Perfect. How has Sook changed for you? Buddy, you said, has remained very fixed, and it's sort of young Truman. Has your understanding of Sook changed with time?
I learn something every time, every year. For 34 years, I go back, I go over the script, make sure that it's in my head, and every year I find something. When they're dumping all of the money out on their lap that they've saved all year long, I was just starting immediately into digging through the coins, and I thought, no, it's like finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You've got to wait and look at Buddy and look back again before you jump in there and start fingering with the money. There's so many little moments in it that it's so rich that you just find something new every time.
Oh, I'm just an old woman with grizzled gray hair, standing at my kitchen window. Got on my tennis shoes and a shapeless sweater over my summery calico blouse. I'm thin, but sprightly, like a bantam hen. But due to a long youthful illness, my shoulders are sometimes pitifully hunched. Buddy says my face is remarkable. Craggy, tinted by sun and wind, but it is delicate too, finely boned. My eyes are sherry-colored and timid.
Of course, when I began doing it, I spent a whole hour on makeup and hair because I was only, what'd you say this was?
34 years.
4 years ago. I was 45, something like that. And a good friend of mine, Georgia West, who's been a docent here for years, is very much a professional stage makeup person, has taken classes at the School of the Arts. She would come over, and for an hour, we would put the highlights and the shadows and the wrinkles, paint in these wrinkles, and the splotches of brown spots on my hand, and it went on and on for an hour, and spray white stuff in my hair, and now all I have to do is just take everything off And I have a wig now, and I'm there, got my own spots and everything. So it's changed, and I hope that my physical demeanor has changed a little. You have to think about that, as you do for any character, that you would do.
Well, many of us tuning into this have seen the play again and again and again. I think that's part of the tradition. I know some families have come 20 plus years in a row.
A lady and her friend, and I think last year someone asked who has seen it multiple times, and some hands were raised, and somebody said, anyone more than 10? And they raised their hands and said 28 out of the 33 years they had come to see it. It's all in the words. He is a magical wordsmith. And I always used to tell students, we all have a dictionary, but who can put the words together? We have 88 keys on a piano. Who can write the sonata? It's pure genius, the words.
Well, I think that your performance is so felt makes it really different each year for us. And I've seen it many times too, but it's different each. I have a very poignant, vivid memory of one year, which was 2012. The Sandy Hook massacre took place a week before your performance.
2 days before.
2 days before your performance. And I remember as the play went on, and there's so much loss and loneliness in the play, and I remember toward the end, the sobs sort of rose through the audience. And as I passed out through the balcony, 2 women were clutching each other around their neck and sobbing. And I checked on them and said, well, are you okay? I'm glad that you had each other to watch this with. And one of them said, oh dear, we've never met each other before. So what was it like? It's always a tear-jerking production, but what was that like?
It was the year before my husband died, so he was not well, so he didn't come. A very dear friend of mine, Jackie Pittman, who was also a docent here, came with me, and I think everybody in the world was the image of those little 7-year-old second graders was so close behind everybody's eyeballs at that moment. We were still reliving, hearing about it on the television, everything. And the minute I walked out and said, oh, the person to whom I'm speaking is my friend. He is 7. I am 70-something. 7 just went through people like, and then at the end when I say, he has a new home too. But I know that doesn't count. Home for Buddy is where I am, and here he never comes. Oh my, how foolish I am. How foolish I am. You know what I always thought? I always thought that a body would have to be sick and dying before they saw the Lord. And that I thought seeing him would be like looking at the Baptist window, pretty as colored glass, with all that sun coming through, such a shine you didn't know it was getting dark. It's always been a comfort to me, that light, taking away all the spooky feeling. But I'll wager that never happens. I'll wager at the very end, a body realizes that the Lord has already showed himself, that things as they are, just as they've always been, was seeing him. As for me, I could leave this world with today in my eyes. This is our last Christmas together. Life separates us. Those who know best decide that Buddy belongs in a military school. And so for Buddy there follows a miserable succession of bugle-blowing prisons, grim, reveille-ridden summer camps. He has a new home too. But I know that doesn't count. Home for Buddy is where I am. And here he never comes. And
here I remain, puttering about my kitchen, alone with Queenie, and then alone. I write to Buddy in my wild, hard-to-read script. Buddy dear, yesterday Jim Macy's horse kicked Queenie bad. Be glad she didn't suffer. I wrapped her in a fine white linen sheet, and I drove her in the buggy all the way down to Simpson's pasture, where she can be with all her bones. For a few Novembers, I continued to bake my fruitcakes single-handed, and not as many, but some. And of course, I always send Buddy the best of the batch. And in every letter, I include a dime wadded in toilet paper. Now, you go to the picture show, and you write me the story. But gradually, in my letters, I tend to confuse this boy with the other Buddy that died so many years ago. And more, 13s aren't the only days I spend in bed. A morning arrives in late November, a birdless, leafless, coming of winter morning, when I cannot rouse myself to exclaim, "Oh my, it's fruitcake weather." And when that happens, Buddy knows it. A message saying so merely confirms a piece of news some secret vein in him had already received, severing from him an irreplaceable part of himself, letting it loose like a kite on a broken string. And that is why I can see Buddy now, walking across some school campus on this particular December day, searching the skies as if he expected to see, rather like hearts, a lost pair of kites hurrying towards heaven.
There were audible sobs, and it wasn't just me, it was everybody. And of course the music is so beautiful in this play. I love a music coming up underneath the end, which you can urge a tear out of almost anyone with the right music coming up. So it was very, that's the one that sticks in my mind for several reasons, but it was very meaningful. We all had to go home and just exhale. It was very poignant.
Well, there's a lot of humor in the play too.
Oh, yes.
And we're borne along by that crystalline prose. I mean, I think Truman Capote's public persona was a little bit of a caricature of himself. And I think that belies how fine a craftsman he was. So what's it like to embody that prose for an hour?
Well, it's wonderful. It's almost humbling because, we're both dog lovers, but that's another part where you'll get somebody every time. They have an old dog, Queenie, that follows them around through their adventures trying to make money for the fruitcakes. And there is a point when Truman is sent off to military school and leaves her and Queenie behind. And then she says, "I write to Buddy in my wild, hard-to-read script. Yesterday, Buddy dear, Jim Macy's horse kicked Queenie bad." That's another weepy part that we will hear people. And then she says, she's already told you that Queenie runs off with her bone and hides it down in Simpson's pasture. And I say, I drove her in the buggy all the way down to Simpson's pasture, where she's buried with all her bones. And it's funny, but it's also very poignant. But she does say funny things throughout that is just delightful because it's so obviously and openly her.
Mm.
Crackle. A cheery crunch, scraps of miniature thunder sound as the shells collapse and the golden mound of sweet, oily ivory meat mounts in a milk glass bowl. Queenie begs to taste, and now and again I sneak her a mite, though insisting that we deprive ourselves. Now we mustn't, buddy. If we start, we won't stop. And there's scarcely enough as there is for 30 cakes. The kitchen is growing dark. Dusk turns the window into a mirror, and our reflections mingle with that of the rising moon as we work by the fireside in the firelight. At last, when the moon is quite high, we toss the final hull into the fire and watch it catch flame. The buggy is empty, the bowl brimful.
My director, Bill, had a fit one time because I put a curtsy in, a little bow at one point, and he said, "What was that about?" But she's dealing with the old moonshiner up in the hills that everybody's scared of. And she's come to buy whiskey for her fruitcakes. But he laughs at them, and she pays him the money, and she says, "We make fruitcakes." And he says, he gives me back the money and says, "You just bring me one of them fruitcakes instead." And she says, "You mean a kind of a trade?" Well, now they're not adversaries. They are business partners almost. "Thank you very much, Mr. Ha-Ha." And I give her a little curtsy. And I just discovered that, several years ago, that now she's on a little elevation, a little higher than she was. And so is he. He's become a gentleman, and she's become a lady. So I find things in her every year that make her very special to me.
It's a very dignifying play.
Yes. It's all of a sudden it's very dignified.
And it's a testament to the power, the life-giving power of friendship, and that the lonely can find one another and form families.
Yes.
However.
And I used to tell high school kids, afterwards we would have a little question and answer, and I would say, if you have a special childhood memory at Christmas, it was probably one developed for you by an old person, whether a neighbor, a grandmother, whomever it may be. And of course I said, you kids would not want to be seen with me at the mall right now with my awful clothes on. But you need to find that person and go and speak to them and thank them for your special Christmas memory.
Home, the great black stove, stoked with coal and firewood, glows like a lighted pumpkin. Egg beaters whirl, spoons spin round in bowls of butter and sugar. Vanilla sweetens the air, ginger spices it. Melting, nose-tingling odors saturate the kitchen, suffuse the house, and drift out to the world on puffs of chimney smoke. In 4 days, our work is done. 31 cakes, dampened with whiskey, sit basking on the windowsills and shelves. Who are they for? Well, friends. Well, not necessarily neighbor friends. Indeed, the larger share are intended for persons we've met maybe once. Perhaps not at all. Persons who just struck our fancy, like President and Mrs. Roosevelt, the Reverend and Mrs. J.C. Lucy, our Baptist missionaries to Borneo who lectured here last winter, the little knife grinder who comes through town twice a year, Abner Packer, the driver of the 6 o'clock bus to Mobile, who exchanges waves every day with us in a dust cloud, whoosh. Oh, and the young Winstons, a California couple whose car broke down one afternoon in our front yard, and he spent a pleasant day chatting with us on the front porch. Young Mr. Winston snapped our picture. Come on, buddy. Now smile. The only one we've ever had taken. Is it because I am shy with everyone except strangers that these strangers and merest acquaintances seem to me my truest friends? Buddy says, I reckon. That and the scrapbooks we keep on thank you notes on White House stationery, time-to-time communication with Borneo and California, and even the little knife grinders' penny postcards all make us feel connected to eventful worlds outside our kitchen window with a view of the sky that stops. Now a new December fig branch grapes against the window. The kitchen is empty. The cakes are gone. Yesterday we carted the last of them off to the post office, where the cost of stamps turned our purse inside out. We are broke. Now that rather depresses Buddy. But I insist on celebrating with the last 2 inches of whiskey in Ha-Ha's bottle. Queenie has a spoonful in her bowl of coffee. Queenie likes her coffee chicory flavored and strong. The rest we divide between a pair of jelly glasses. Oh, we're both quite awed at the prospect of drinking straight whiskey. Now wait a minute, Buddy. Just wait a minute. Well, we have to have a toast. No, Buddy, not toast. A toast. It means you're supposed to drink in honor of somebody or something. Buddy says we should drink in honor of us. To us. But when it comes time for making each other's gift, we separate and work secretly. Now, Buddy would like to give me a pearl handle knife, a radio, a whole pound of chocolate-covered cherries. Oh, we tasted some once, and I said I could live on them. Lord, yes, I could. And that is not taking his name in vain. Instead, I am fairly certain he is building me a kite. Now, I would like to give Buddy a bicycle. Oh, I have said so on several thousand occasions, if only I could. It is bad enough in life to do without something you want, but confound it, what gets my goat is not being able to give somebody else something you want them to have. Only one of these days I will, Buddy. Locate you a bike. Don't ask me how. Steal it, maybe. Instead, I am building him a kite, too. Same as last year. Oh, the year before that, we exchanged slingshots, which is all just fine with us. For we are champion kite flyers who study the wind like sailors. Buddy says that I am more accomplished than he is, that I can get a kite aloft when there isn't enough breeze to carry a cloud. Well, Christmas Eve afternoon, we managed to scrape together a nickel to go to the butcher's to buy Queenie's traditional gift, a good, gnawable beef bone. The bone, wrapped in funny paper, is placed high in the tree, just below the silver star. Oh, Queenie knows that it's there. Oh, she squats in front of that tree and stares up in a trance of greed. And when bedtime comes, she refuses to budge. Well, her enthusiasm is equaled only by our own. I can hear Buddy in his room down the hall tossing and turning, and I'm punching at my pillow. Though it were a scorching summer night, somewhere a rooster crows falsely, for the sun is still on the other side of the world. Buddy? Buddy, are you asleep? Buddy, are you awake? Well, I can't sleep either. Scooch over, I can't sleep worth a hoot. Give me that. My mind's jumping like a jackrabbit. Oh, Buddy. Do you suppose Mrs. Roosevelt will be serving our cake at dinner tonight? I hope so, too. We huddle in the bed together and I squeeze his hand. I love you. But Buddy, your hand used to seem so much smaller. I guess I hate to see you grow up. When you're all grown up, will we still be friends? Buddy says, always. Oh, but Buddy, I feel so bad. I wanted so bad to give you a bite. I tried to sell my cameo Papa give me. I made you another kite. And then Buddy confesses, he made me one too. And we laugh. The candle grows too short to hold. Out it goes, exposing the starlight. The stars spinning at the window like a visible caroling. And slowly, slowly, daylight silences.
We want to close with some memories that people have sent us to share with you of what the play has meant to them. And it's been a gift to Winston-Salem for so many of us for so many years. If I could ask you for a closing thought, just to speak to what generosity means in the play. The giving of the cakes means so much to these two people. What does it say about generosity?
It's their life's work. I mean, for several years that he was there, they worked all year. They had rummage sales. They did everything. They gave away. She even tried to give away her cameo, and I put it on today as a tribute to Miss Sook, wanting to buy Buddy a bicycle, which he's not able to do. But they wrap these gifts and they spend the last penny they have to send them off to people who are not even close relatives, not really even close friends, people that they have met and admired and have treated them kindly as well. The little knife grinder who comes through town twice a year, that's a special friend, even though they'll never really be close to him. It's somebody that has treated her kindly. And they do all of this and to give away. And it's a beautiful tribute to friendship and people who've meant something in your lives.
Thank you for giving us your memories, Robin.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to.
We hope to see you all in 2021.
Yeah.
Happy holidays. Be safe. Be well. Thank you.